Hi everyone, this week for ELA we have read 2 stories. The first 2 days we looked at the book Owl Moon, and yesterday we looked at the book called Roxaboxen. Now each of these books gave us some great sensory details. On here I listed the 5 sensory details: smell, taste, touch, see, and hear. Those are the 5 sensory details. Now today we're going to practice a little bit about sensory details, and we're going to look at our school's cafeteria and answer the questions based on that place. So if we're thinking about the school's cafeteria, what do you think it might smell like? Now we might write down that it smells like food. You might be able to smell, sometimes we can smell the trash. We might be able to smell like freshly baked pizza. You might be able to smell the oils that they're using to cook the different types of foods that we eat at school. So this would go under the smells category. Now, if we're thinking about taste, it would be different based on what you are eating. So you might taste something that is sweet. You might taste something that might be sour. Or you might taste something and you might say it's delicious. Or you could taste something that you might think is gross. You don't like it. So that would go under taste. Now, under touch, we could also write that would mean feel. So it's the same thing as feel. So what does the cafeteria feel like? Now you could think about food. You could think about what you're actually feeling with your hands. Or you could think about the temperature. Since we eat outside, a lot of the times it is hot. Even though we sit in the shade, you can still feel the heat from the sun. You might touch something that is soft. Maybe your food is soft. You're eating a sandwich. You might touch something that is hard, like the picnic tables. You might touch something that is cold. Maybe your water bottle is cold. So these are some examples of things that you could touch or feel at the cafeteria. Now, what do we see at the cafeteria? You might see the soccer field from where you're sitting. You might see lines of people. So people are waiting in the snack shop line, or people are waiting in line to get their food. You would see a lot of people who are eating. Maybe you see people who are talking. These are just some examples of what you might see at the cafeteria. And lastly, what would you hear? What are some things that we hear at the cafeteria? We might hear people talking. It might be loud because people are talking a lot. Maybe you hear people playing. Or sometimes you might hear someone yelling. Maybe you could hear someone chewing their food if they're not closing their mouths when they're eating. These are just some examples of sensory details. Okay? So sensory details. Now, if we think back to our story, Owl Moon, we could write down some ideas of sensory details that the author used. So if we think back to the story, we know that it was about a father and his child, and they were going owling. And we know that it was very quiet. They said that they couldn't talk while they were owling. Based on what they were wearing, we know it was very cold. Maybe we could write down that it took a long time. It was starting to get dark. They could hear other animals. All right. So if we think about sensory details, it helps us to understand the story better when the author uses many sensory details. It is not super exciting to read a story when the author doesn't describe it very well to us. Yesterday, I had you write 10 sentences about an imaginary place. So just like in the story Rock-a-Boxin', the students created an imaginary place near their houses, and they created their own little town. And in that story, they used some great sensory details to help us understand and picture better what that place was like. So today, I want you to do some brainstorming. So I know you've already thought about your imaginary place, and I know you've already started writing. Now I want you to look back at your writing and see if it's interesting. Okay, so think about it. Now I want you to get a new piece of paper and put your imaginary place in the middle. So I'm going to write place. And where I write the word place, I want you to write what the name of your imaginary place is. And then you're going to put a circle around it. Now, I want you to draw lines coming out of the circle that tell me something about your place. Now, I went ahead and wrote down one for my place. So I made gingerbread land. And if any of you know about gingerbread houses, that's what some people do during Christmas time. They make little gingerbread houses out of gingerbread, cookies, and candies. So I'm going to think about what it looks like. And I might write down that there are brown pieces of gingerbread. I might say that it is full of colorful candy. It smells sweet. These are just some examples that I've come up with. Now, I want you to take the time to think about some sensory details for your place. See if you can write down 10 things total. Okay? I want you to come up with 10 things. And I would prefer that you come up with at least 2 things for each of these categories. Smell, taste, feel, hear, and see. So for all of these, I want you to come up with 2. So if we bring it back to math, we know 2 times 5 of these would equal 10. So I want you to come up with 10 things, but 2 for each of these categories. So that is your job today, to brainstorm things about sensory details for your imaginary place.